Well, hi, everybody. As you're logging in, we're very happy to see you. My name is Charlene Margot, and I'm co-founder of nonprofit, the parent venture that brings you this program, the Parent Education Series, now in its 19th season. For about the last 4 years, we've been offering these parent forums monthly in both English and Spanish. And we're delighted to have with us today Dr. Eran Magen, who's going to be talking to you about how to give advice your child might listen to. Please join me, everybody, in a really warm welcome for our friend, Dr. Eran Magen. Take it away, Eran.
Thank you, Charlene. I shall take it away. Hi, everybody. Nice to see quite a few of you. This is a treat. Hello, Terry. So today we will talk. Oh, very soon we will talk about. May I please share a screen first, Charlene and Bev? Otherwise, I'm just talking and everybody will fall asleep. Okay, so here we are. So I'll talk for a little bit, honestly, as quickly as I can, about ideas about what we can be doing to give advice that our kids might listen to. And then after that, we'll all discuss together and think together about anything that you would like, honestly. So, first of all, good work, making time, coming here, being parents, surviving the whole thing. This is not trivial. I also want to say right at the outset, I think we don't quite hear this enough. You're doing a good job. And in all likelihood, they're going to be fine. They're going to be just fine, and we're trying to figure out ways to do this that are comfortable enough for us as parents and work well enough for them as kids. But the fact that you're even taking time to come to something like this and learn more about how to parent well and how to connect with your kids, that's amazing. Good for you. Hopefully, this will become one of the tools in your tool belt. So in the range of possible interactions between kids and parents, I think about them in these like 3 blocks. When everybody's more or less okay and we're just building the relationship, when people are a little bit upset in the yellow and we're supporting them, when people are super upset and we might need to do crisis intervention. And today we're talking about how to give advice, which usually comes up in one of 2 contexts, either when the kids are a little bit upset because something wrong happened, or maybe even a lot upset because something happened and we have ideas about how they can make it so that it doesn't happen again or repair whatever happened. But it also happens just in the course of normal life, right? They're doing something and you're thinking to yourself, oh, they could be doing this differently. It would be so much better. And so these are the contexts we're talking about. They might be a little bit upset. They might be not upset at all, but roughly in that range. And there's so many different things that we can suggest for how they can do better, right? From athletic activities to academic work to navigating social life and taking care of themselves and their health and all of these different things. There's so many different things that we see and we have clear ideas about what they can do better, but sometimes giving advice doesn't land well. And we want to maximize the chance that they'll listen or at least consider what we have to say. So today is about how do we maximize this chance. First, a quick zoom out. I think about relationships in terms of the amount of goodwill that is in them. And essentially, when there's more goodwill in the relationship account, everything becomes easier. Everything becomes easier. There's more trust in the relationship. Everybody's more likely to be honest. Everybody's more likely to be vulnerable and be okay with sharing things that maybe don't seem or look perfect. Everybody puts in more effort into not just the relationship, but also into requests that one party makes. The other is more likely to then comply and try to do it really in good faith. People forgive one another more when they've made mistakes. So many good things come out of having more goodwill in the relationship. And so almost everything that I do, with the exception of how to handle crisis situation in relationships and with kids, that aside, and any other time, my focus is on building goodwill. And as we get more goodwill, everything becomes easier. And the basic formula is that we put goodwill into the relationship by showing our kids that we care about them or that we respect them. And we take goodwill out of the relationship by showing them that we don't. We also take goodwill out of relationships by asking the other person to inconvenience themselves on our behalf, right? From like pass the salt, do the laundry, pick up the thing on the way home, do this thing differently than you normally would. These all take goodwill out of the relationship. It's fine. I mean, we do inconvenience ourselves regularly over the course of a regular relationship for the other person, but we have to also make deposits because otherwise it becomes it gets old really fast, right? When we're just doing something for somebody else and they never seem to care about us or respect us or do anything for us. And in this framework of care and respect leading to more goodwill, let's think about how giving advice fits in. First and foremost, I would say, remember the time when you told a friend or a family member, perhaps a parent, about something you were going through, and they immediately just unleashed their full extent of their wisdom on you and started telling you exactly what you should be doing, what you should not be doing when you never even asked for it. It's not a pleasant experience, right? By and large, unsolicited advice in particular is a relational withdrawal, right? You're taking goodwill out of the relationship when you're just throwing advice at somebody who did not ask for it. Leaving aside even the question of whether or not that was good advice. So when we give advice, we want to think about ways to make the actual giving of the advice the smallest possible withdrawal. So we're not taking too much goodwill out of the relationship. And we want to make sure to make deposits in the relationship right before and or right after giving this piece of advice, right? We're still at the kind of abstract level, but I'll get more concrete in a minute. But this is one of the major points to remember. Unsolicited advice is a withdrawal. You can ask for permission to give advice, and that makes it solicited advice. It's sort of like the vampire trying to get into your house, right? Like they have to be invited, but they can say, can you invite me? And then you invite them in, and then they're invited in, and then they can come in, and then shenanigans ensue. So you can say, can I suggest something? And that's very different than just suggesting it immediately. Okay, having said this, here is kind of the full list of suggestions that I have for you about how to make it more likely that advice will land favorably. And then I'll go into a little bit of detail into each. One is timing. Timing is really crucial. Timing includes what's everybody's mood? Do we have time to sit and listen and process? How close are we to the time of a mistake that was made or a mistake that might potentially be made? But most of all, are we basically able to be present and talk about this, assuming that this is something that has some kind of depth? It's not just like, no, turn it this way, not this way. But if there's more depth to it, do we have the time and the presence of mind to do this? Secondly, as I mentioned before, asking for permission. It's a big deal. It takes 2 seconds to do. It's so easy and it's so respectful to say, I have an idea about this. Do you want to hear? Or to say, I have a suggestion. Can I share it? Right? Makes a huge difference. Aligning goals. That's a really, really big one too. To be able to, so you know that as a parent, when you're suggesting something to your child, the only thing on your mind is making your child's life better. That's your only goal here. And your child does not always remember this. And it's okay to remind your child of this. And it's okay to even get specific and say, I know how much you want to, make it through the auditions to get onto school band. And I have some thoughts about things that could help you with this. Right? That's a very different opener than, listen, you have to practice at least 2 hours. If the conversation just starts with that, that's very different than if you take a moment to explicitly align yourself with your kid's goals and say, I'm doing this in service of this goal that I know that you have. Consulting with your kid when giving advice, especially in something that's a little bit more complicated, like at what part of the day to do homework, like what to do with a friend when there's a tense situation going on, anything that's a little more involved, rather than just dropping it right on their head, taking some time to really act like a consultant, ask some questions that help them think about it, suggest different options and see what they think, or at a minimum, suggest your option, but ask them what they think about it and kind of poke holes in your solution together, right? So that your kid has some ownership of the process. Remember that you don't know everything about your kids. That becomes truer the older they get, but they spend a lot of their time away from us, and we just don't know what their life is like and what they're like when they're away. And sometimes we'll suggest things that actually are not going to work for them. And they know, and they can explain why or when this happens. And so even when we suggest something, to say something like, I don't know everything about what's going on between you and Jenny, but from what you told me, it sounds like this and this and this. And if something like this happened to me, I think I would try to blah, blah, blah. Could this work in your case, right? And take a very humble approach here and say, like, you teach me about your problem and about how my solution might apply to your problem, rather than coming in saying, I'm just 1,000 times smarter than you and wiser than you, so just listen to what I say and do it. It's just hard to swallow for most people. And personally, I'm a huge fan of suggesting experiments, especially if your kid is not sure whether or not your solution is a good idea, whether or not it's going to work, right? To say, how about we try an experiment? How about we do this for 3 days, for a week, for whatever period of time they think is reasonable? And likewise, they might have an idea about how they might do things differently. If getting homework assignments in on time has been an issue and your kid would like to hand in homework assignments on time, and you're thinking about times to do homework, and your kid says, oh, the best time for me it's best for me to wake up at 4 a.m. and work for a couple of hours. I don't want to do this, late in the evening or even in the afternoon. And you might say, oh, I think the best time to do it is while dinner is cooking. And they go, no, 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 absolutely 4 a.m. Maybe you say, okay, how about we do an experiment? How about we try your way first? And we'll kind of reconvene in a week and see what happens. Assuming they're not going to, get thrown out of school during that week, this might be a very valuable experiment. And it shows tremendous respect for them. And when you agree to try their way for a bit, it makes it that much more likely they'll agree to try your way for a bit afterwards, right? And this becomes, again, a cooperative co-construction process. Lastly, as I alluded to before, with them getting thrown out of school, if it's not an absolute emergency, as much as possible, let them decide. Let them try, let them fail, or let them do a thing that you think would result in failure, but turns out to be successful because they actually do have ideas about what might work. Let them try and let them maintain a sense of autonomy, because overriding somebody else's autonomy is a huge relational withdrawal, right? It's kind of the ultimate sign of disrespect. When they say no and you say absolutely yes, over your dead body, I will do this. That does not leave the relationship in a great place afterwards. And the strength of the relationship matters more than the success of the particular task, right? I would rather something happen in a way that's not optimal, but maintain a very strong relationship, than force it to happen in an optimal way and lose relationship points. Because when I have a strong relationship with my kid is that much more likely to, yes, try different things that I suggest and actually put effort into it. And in the long term, I believe will do much better and will come to me when there are problems, and all these good things will happen, right? Whereas if I force the right solution right now and I lose relationship points, I start adding friction to the relationship. I lose long term unless I'm willing to constantly enforce forcefully the solutions I believe in. And I don't want to live like that. Pretty sure my kid wouldn't want to have me live like that too. So allowing autonomy as much as possible and just kind of putting things into perspective and saying, is there time to fail here? Is it okay for this to not work for a bit? And then for us to, if your kid does not accept the solution that you suggested, can your kid afford the consequences of having autonomy? And I think most of the time the answer is yes. So we have another session that we do here and there's a recording of it on the Parent Venture YouTube channel about what to do when your kid's upset, how to support your kid when your kid's upset. And I'm bringing up just like a taster of it because it's very often a time when we want to give advice is when our kids are upset about something. And it's very often the worst possible time to give advice because they're upset. And if we come in to their field of vision, and as they're trying to tell us about their upset, we're trying to give them a solution. They just direct their upset at us. And everybody leaves that interaction unhappy, right? So if they have a big emotion going on, kind of, I call this a big emotional charge, and you try to add information or viewpoints or ideas into their head, they don't have room for anything inside of them when they're upset. And so if something is actively wrong for them, the first order of business is helping them calm down, helping them feel less upset. And after they're less upset, you can give them your wisdom. But trying to do it before will often not work. And so, again, if they're starting super upset, our goal is to bring them down to being calm or relatively calm and then give them advice rather than fix the problem, quote unquote, and lose them in the process, at least momentarily. And the very short version of how to do this is if they're coming to you saying, "Oh, my math teacher is so stupid. You know, I keep doing what she tells me to do, and then she keeps saying that it's wrong." And you say, "What's going on?" Then and your kid starts explaining, and you say, "Oh, what you should be doing is blah blah blah." Gone. It's not going to work. So instead, here's what we want to be doing. Again, like very brief primer. We want to follow our kid's story as much as we can and just give them opportunity to release the charge. Ideally by paraphrasing. I call this wigging. Wig is an acronym for what I got. So we paraphrase what they say. And so you're saying math is super frustrating because of your teacher? Yes, because every time I try to do the thing, you know, we're doing integrals and I'm doing exactly the formula. And then she says, no, that's wrong, but that's exactly what she taught a minute ago. Right. And so we paraphrase. Say, okay, so you're applying exactly what was on the board. And she says it's wrong. And your kid goes, kind of. I mean, sometimes I get confused and more information comes out and they talk and talk and talk. And eventually they calm down. And this can happen over the course of, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes. But trying to give advice as they're actively upset just results in butting heads. And so ideally they tell their story, you paraphrase, they say, yes, exactly. And they get a little bit more calmed down and they give you more information. And then you paraphrase the story back to them and they go, that's right. And then they say a little bit more. And this repeats a couple of times and eventually they're calm. And when they're calm, then you can check with them. If you have ideas to share, you might say, is this, you know, can I make a suggestion? And if they're calm, more than likely they'll say sure. Or they might say no. And if they say no, leave it alone and respect the boundary they set and strengthen the relationship. Because this process of listening to them as they're upset is a huge relationship builder. It shows so much care and so much respect for their experience. Right. And so you leave the conversation with a stronger relationship, much more goodwill in the relationship. And so if in the end you ask them if they'd like some suggestions or advice or hear a story from your childhood about when you were going in the snow both ways uphill to the school and you had math and they say no, good, leave it alone. Say thank you for sharing, you know, and if you want to talk about it, I'll be here doing important grown-up stuff in the living room. Or if they say yes, say great, here are my thoughts, and you do it kind of in a humble way. So this is that second part of the conversation. Again, we go over all this in much more detail in that workshop, and you can just see the recording of it if you're interested. Although I'm sure we'll have it at some point. It's in the rotation. We'll have it again. But once you're done listening, once they've released their charge and they calm down, say, do I have your permission, basically, to give some advice? Do you want to hear a suggestion? Is this a good time to share a story? And as we talk, we say, I don't know everything about this situation, but it sounds to me like blah, blah, blah. What do you think? Could this work? What are reasons this might not work? And now you're consulting with them, right? So that's kind of the quick formula for how to support them when they're upset. All right. I think we covered most of it. So the main points, again, just be mindful of timing, especially as it relates to people's mood, right? Upset people are not in a good place to hear new ways of thinking and new ways of orienting to things. That's not what anger is about. Anger is not about cognitive flexibility. And so ideally, find them in a calm time. If they're upset right now, make a note, talk to them tomorrow morning. Say, do you remember yesterday this thing happened? I have, I've been thinking about it and I have some thoughts. Do you want to hear? So if they didn't ask for advice, at the very least, ask them if they'd like to hear some advice, right? Don't just drop it on them because they feel about it exactly the way you feel about it when somebody gives you advice you didn't ask for. As much as possible, minimize withdrawals. That's also, it's kind of a big topic, but make sure that you are delivering your suggestion in a way that's caring, in a way that's aligned with their goals, that shows respect toward their attempts and their possibility of growing and becoming better. Because it's easy, especially if we're frustrated with something, kind of a mistake they've been doing repeatedly, it's easy to be dismissive or harsh. And again, it's just not gonna help the relationship and likely will be rejected by them, right? So we want to come to it from a place that's more caring if we can. Align with their goals. Saying, like the example I gave before about, what was it, band, getting into band, right? You want to pass the audition to get into school band, and I would love to see you on the stage or in the parade doing the thing with the giant drum. And, I know that, I would love to see that too. I know that you want to do that as well. And I want to support you in getting there. And so I've been thinking about things that might help. Do you want to hear? Right. That's a lot harder to say no to when somebody's aligned or aiming to align so much with your vision, with your own goals for yourself. And to say clearly, like, I'm doing this because I want to see good things for you and these specific good things for you. I didn't, rather than saying over breakfast, oh, Frank, I was thinking, you should probably practice a couple hours every day. That lands very differently than going through the short story that I gave you before. I've been thinking in band and you want to do this and I really want to see you happy with this and so on. Generally speaking, help them maintain autonomy. That's a big part of minimizing the withdrawal, and it's actually a deposit. Say this is an idea that I had. What do you think? How would it fit in your schedule? Would you want to do it? And invite them to participate. This is true for kids who are 2 years old, 3 years old, 30 years old. Everybody feels better and has more ownership and more buy-in when they can participate in the construction of the solution. And ultimately they choose, right? Unless it's an absolute emergency, let them choose, let them experiment, be their support, but it's their life. And sometimes they'll be right. And some strange solution they suggested works miraculously, and often it won't. And that's okay too. And then you come in later, not with an I told you so, but with a, okay, do you want to try version B and see what happens then? And so experiments are such a nice way to share power. Let's try it your way. Let's try it my way. Let's see what happens. Finally, when you're done giving your piece of advice, and especially if they've accepted it, just walk away. I mean, be nice about it, but don't keep repeating the thing. What a great achievement that you gave advice and they were willing to listen to it and maybe consider. Done. Don't harp on it. Move on to something fun. And so with that in mind, I'm going to stop right now. I'll just mention two things. There are two websites that I run. One is called Parenting for Humans. .com. The other is divorcingdads.org. So Parenting for Humans is for this kind of stuff and sort of parenting in general. And if you're interested, you're welcome to join the mailing list. You can get blog posts. There's a podcast coming for this one, parenting groups that meet and discuss just how things are going. And then divorcingdads.org is for divorcing dads, as you might imagine. The idea is just to give dads tools to stay connected with their kids during a divorce and just take good care of themselves and ideally reduce conflict and just do co-parenting better. There are not a lot of resources for dads out there, which is a pity because divorcing dads are a very high risk population. And so that's my attempt to contribute there. If this doesn't apply to you, maybe it applies to somebody you know. please tell them. Same kind of deal, actually, blog post. There is a podcast where I interview dads going through the process of divorce and thinking about kind of the hard parts and the easy part, or the kind of the wins, and how they managed to stay connected to their kids, and ideas, strategies that worked and didn't work in terms of peaceful co-parenting and so on. Groups to meet and discuss and offer mutual support. So for both of those, it's either parentingforhumans.com/join or divorcingdads.org/join, and this will add you to the mailing list, and then you get all these things.